Here's a solution for day 1, problem 1. Simplify as much as possible. We have 25 to the negative 3/2 power. This negative 3/2 is the exponent on the 25. Now, this exponent has a couple parts that we need to interpret. One is the negative. What is the meaning of a negative exponent? It means to take a reciprocal. So in our first step, we can rewrite this using a reciprocal. And it would look like this. 25 to the negative 3/2 power is equal to 1 over 25 to the positive 3/2 power. The exponent also is a fraction that has a denominator of 2. That can be interpreted to mean a square root. And so in our next step, we can rewrite it as 1 over 5 to the 3rd power. I've used the denominator in the exponent to take the square root of 25, creating a 5. In the final step, we can write 1 over 125. Day 1, problem 2, factor the polynomial. Here we have a polynomial with 2 terms. This is called a binomial. The first type of factoring to look for is to look for a greatest common factor. Is there a number other than 1 that divides into 16 and into 81? There's not. There's also not a variable that would divide into both terms. So there is no factoring out a GCF. The next thing to look for is other types of factoring. This is a binomial with a minus sign. This is a difference. Each term in this difference is a special type of polynomial called a perfect square. You can take the square root of 16x to the 4th power and get a nice result. You can take the square root of 81 and get a whole number result. This is called a difference of squares. And a difference of squares factors into this basic pattern. A binomial with a sum, meaning there's going to be an adding sign in it, times a binomial with a difference. There's going to be a minus sign in here. To get these pieces, we're going to take square roots of those terms up there. The square root of 16x to the 4th is 4x squared, which gets written here and gets written over here. If you can imagine multiplying these together to create this answer, this would be the letter F in the word FOIL. The 4x squared times the 4x squared is how you get 16x to the 4th power. Now the square root of 81 is 9. To get negative 81, you'd have to have a positive 9 multiplied by a negative 9. And again, you can always check that this is the correct result by using FOIL and making sure that you get that result. Before stopping, we need to check if this factors any further. So we want to look at each factor we created. So here's the first factor. This is a sum of 2 terms. Each term is a perfect square, but a sum of perfect squares does not factor further. Looking at this factor, however, this is another difference of squares. Just like that original one was a difference of squares. So this right here can factor. So next step, we're going to begin with our 4x squared plus 9 factor, but then replace the 4x squared minus 9 with this basic pattern. This here and this here we get by taking the square root of 4x squared. That would be 2x times 2x. 2x times 2x is 4x squared. This number here and this number here we get by taking the square root of 9. That would be a positive 3 times a negative 3. Quick check to make sure these don't factor any further, and they do not. So here is the factored form of the original polynomial.